Okay, hello everyone. So excited to have you here, and we're going to start the webinar right now. Before we're going to start, a few technical details. So we are going to mute all the attendees. So Therese, who is here, is going to lead the webinar. She'll be able to give you all her insights, but it is a conversation. We would like you to be engaged because it's about you and not about us. So any question you have, we encourage you, type it in. There's a chat and there's a Q&A functionality that you can use, and you can use either of them. I'll monitor it as Therese speaks, and then I'll make sure that we have time to cover your questions. If we don't have time, don't worry, because we're going to pick it up after this webinar, and we will see how to address those questions. Maybe we'll produce content on it. Maybe there'll be another webinar. So you get the picture. Without further ado, please let me introduce Therese. I would love Therese to give you a brief introduction, then I'll tell you about SAPIA a little bit, and then we'll dive deep into the world of wholesale, your first 100 days in wholesale. Therese, stage is yours.
Hi everyone, it's lovely to be here. So obviously my name is Therese, you already knew that, but I run a business called Small Business Collaborative, and I work as a business mentor where I help brands like you guys to start to wholesale or grow your wholesale, scale your wholesale, and grow your businesses and become more profitable. So I think wholesale is a great way to reach more people, and we'll go through more about that and why you might want to wholesale in the webinar. But I work one-to-one with clients, and then I have some online courses, which I've done with another lady who is also a business expert. And I'll put in the end of the webinar, there's all my details, so you can have a look at that. And yeah, I tend to work in a very collaborative way, hence collaborative, where, you know, it's a collaboration between us when we work together. It's all very friendly and kind of oversharing everything I know to help you grow your business. I have a background in sales. I worked in sales for 12 years. And I'm an introvert, so I've had to kind of learn how to sell and how to put myself out there as an introvert and still do my job. And I manage sales teams for, you know, we had quite big sales targets, lots of different types of products, both to independent retail and to all the big guys like John Lewis and anyone on the high street, really, as well as kind of thinking outside the box and coming up with other revenue streams for the businesses that I work for. And now I help you do the same. So, yeah.
So thank you for the introduction. That is great. We started following Therese actually on Instagram. I fell in love with her videos, and then I sent it to the team and I said, check out this lady. You have to see what she's up to. And we reached out, started talking, and the collaboration was formed. Therese is going to walk you through what we call your first 100 days in wholesale. So what should you be thinking about as you start expanding your business into wholesale? Most of you are new, taking your first strides in this new channel or world, right? You need to be aware of the risks, but also the opportunities. And what should you focus on? So that's the purpose of today. And we kept it limited in attendance because we wanted to only the people that it's relevant for to be here. We're also going to record it so you can share it later with your friends and anyone that you think will enjoy this content. It's free. We're going to put it out there so they can benefit from it as well. So briefly, before we jump into the actual content, what does SAPIA do? Well, to explain that, let's talk about what's happening in the world right now. And you might have guessed it, it's COVID-19. That change is pretty much forcing everything and everyone to move online. And that is causing a huge pain, because if everyone is online, everyone is trying to stand out, everyone is trying to tell their story, you have to make sure that you know how to tell your story, you can build relationships, and you convey trust online. So to combat that and to fill that gap and to help you ride those winds of change, we formed SAPIA Social Wholesale, which is a platform and a community. The platform in itself puts you in the front and center as a brand, lets you tell your story, build trust and relationships with retailers, right? And this is brilliant. We put no barriers between you and the buyer. We make it commission free. Why? Because we want to enable you to do business without barriers. You don't need to be dependent on anything today. And the second part of what I mentioned, not only the platform, that's anyone, any person or any team could create a lovely platform, okay? However, what we're here to create is a community. The community is about you, collaborating with others, doing business without barriers, connecting, producing content, working on impact, sustainability, content, whatever it is that you need, the community is here to help you. Together, we're stronger. So I've spoken long enough. Without further ado, Therese, please take it away. And maybe just to guide that discussion, let's start with a question while you share your screen.
Yeah, go for it.
As a brand in the UK, let's say I'm a one-man, one-woman show working from home, what is the first thing I need to consider when I'm starting to wholesale?
I always think your pricing. Like, everything starts with your pricing. Of course, everything starts with your customer, really. But, you know, if you have already been selling for a while, you might know your customer quite well already. But once you want to start to wholesale, I think pricing is so key, because it's not just a marketing exercise. You know, it's to grow your business. You need to make money. Otherwise, you're just going to become very, very busy and, you know, without any benefits, really. So, yeah, I always say start with your pricing.
Got it. I'm going to let you jump right to it. I'm kind of thinking also not only about pricing, I agree with that 100%, but also making the decision. Are you ready to enter into a new world? Because
yeah,
as you've explained on your webinars and other material that we watched, right? It's, you start something new, it's going to mean that your business is going to be run a bit differently. And then I'm sure you're going to cover it later. Pricing is one element, an aspect of it, but also you suddenly have to consider new relationships with retailers. What does it mean for you and your pricing strategy? What does it mean for how you work, right?
Yeah, it means a lot of things, but absolutely. I think, you know, I always tend to start these things with like what wholesale is, because I'm sure a lot of you will have heard lots of different terms, a lot of different, you know, you might have spoken to some retailers and they might have told you, we only do this or we only do that. And it can get really confusing. So I always like to start with what wholesale is. And I think the main difference between wholesale and retail being your own sales, on whether that is not on the high street or Etsy or in a market, that is your retail sales. And then wholesale is when you're selling to another business at a discounted price in volume. So there might be like lots of different terms that you've come across, and sale return being the most common one, or SOR. And it's got very muddied what sale return means. And I think even some retailers are very confused, or they kind of tweaked it to suit what works for them. And it's just become really, really messy, I think. Sale return essentially means that a shop, a business, places an order for your products, and if it doesn't sell, then they can return that against a credit or a refund. Traditionally, well, the way it supposedly works, the way I think it should be dealt with for it to benefit both parties, because I don't think it could be a one-way, you know, only benefit the retailer. I think it should benefit you as the brand, and it should benefit the stockist as well. So the way it could work, and I think it's really, really important to define this, is to, you know, the retailer places an order, you approve the quantities, you think they have got all your best sellers, it's going to move and it's going to move fast. And you think they can sell all those quantities in a set period of time. And then you invoice them, whether if they are on Forma, which is payment upfront, then they pay you, you send them the goods. If you're making the goods, they should pay you before you make them. If you have the stock available, then they should pay you before you pack the order. And then you agree a time limit. So say it has to be on the shop floor for, say, three months, for example, or 2 months. And then if it doesn't sell, they can return any unsold stock within 4 months, say. But I think that it's really important to have a deadline on both sides, so that they can't just have it on the shop floor for a week and then say, oh, that doesn't sell. They have to keep it for a set amount of time. It has to be out on the shop floor, and they then can return any unsold stock after the, say, 4 months or 6 months. And then you check the stock, and if it's in mint condition, they can return it against the credit. Now, I know SAPIA has this thing where you do almost like a trial. So I know that on the platform you encourage people to give the retailers an opportunity to test the product, but that's just what sale return traditionally should mean. It's become very muddied, and a lot of people are treating it as commission instead, or something similar. So commission is traditionally what would happen in an art gallery, for example. An artist would supply work, the gallery would show that work, sell it, and then take a commission off the sale. Similarly to what Not on the High Street does, for example. But when that comes to a brick and mortar place, it's really important to define who's in charge of damages, unfortunately, people steal, for example, so who's in charge of that stock loss? If you're operating on traditional sale return, very clear terms, then you only credit what they return, whereas with commission, you get paid for what they sell. So if they lose some of your stock, you would have also lost that. So you'd have to define what that means if you want to offer commission. Commission could be a good way if you don't have the margins to wholesale yet and you want to try if it works in a shop environment. So I'm not saying it can't ever work. It can work. Or if you have I have a client, she has lots of smaller pieces, and then she has some really big furniture that she does offer on commission, where the shop has a display essentially, and then she takes orders for them and they take commission on those sales. So it can work, but I just think that it needs to be very clearly defined. You have to have set rules. Rules make it much easier for everyone. Then you have drop shipping, and that's generally when an online website, online shop lists your products, and when they get an order, you fulfill it, and you invoice them rather than their customer. And then you have rent a shelf or rent a space, which is very common, where you pay a monthly rental fee. You might also have a commission on top of that. You're in charge of making sure that your shelf is topped up and looks good. Some of them charge contributions towards staffing. There's lots of different ways, but there's definitely lots of rent a shelf, rent a space places. And then you have concessions, which is essentially a shop in a shop. So a little bit the same as a rent a shelf sort of thing, but you generally also have to pay for staffing. So that's the easiest way to describe that is the beauty halls in a department store, where you have lots of different brands. So the benefit counter will be a concession, for example. Is there any questions about that, or is that clear?
Yeah, let's give the audience an opportunity. And if there are no questions at this point, so let's continue with that story. Let's say I started and I realized from you what is wholesale, right? what else should I consider then? So I understand the different models. What's the next step I should take?
So the next step would be to make sure that your product is ready. So, you know, selling your products online on Etsy or your website, or maybe even at a market, is quite different for it to sell in a shop. And the reason why that is of course, when you're at a market, you're there as a maker. You can make that connection with your customer. You can tell them how something works. You can sell to them. But if it's in a shop, it has to sell by itself. And, you know, one of the reasons why we want to be displayed in shops and sell to shops is, of course, we want to sell higher volumes, but we also want to increase our brand awareness. So you need to consider that your products have your branding on them, and that is after, you know, it's taken out of the gift box that you supply with it. For example, like, you want to make sure that whoever receives it remember what brand it is, especially if it's a gift. You want to think about how things are packaged and how things will be displayed. Like, will it be sitting on a table? Will it stack? Will it stand up? How will it stand up? Will it hang? Does it have a Euro hook cut out if it's going to hang? How will it hang? So you need to think about how it's going to be displayed. You need to think about how your retail packaging will stand the test of time. So the whole point with a brick and mortar is that people can touch and feel your product. So it's really important that you have packaging that can withstand that. So if you supply jewelry on a backing card, is that backing card sturdy enough for people to take it down from like the hanger thing, look at the earrings, or is it just going to fall apart after 3 people does that, you know? Or is it going to start looking very dirty? I mean, at the moment, people are not touching as much, so that's good. But, you know, for example, if you have jewelry and you have white backing cards, is that going to look white, you know, stay looking white? And then, of course, legal requirements. That's really, really important. It's your responsibility to check the legalities. It's there's obviously going to be a lot of changes coming in next year. So, you know, you need to keep an eye on that. You need to meet all the legal requirements in every territory that you sell to. And if you're already selling, that should already be part of your process. So if you're selling to the US, because they have some states have stricter laws, you need to make sure that your products are actually legal where you're shipping to. So, and that's also for your business insurance. Of course, we don't have a culture here in the UK where we just sue people right, left and center, but they do in other countries, and especially if you do baby products, for example, it's really important.
Lovely. I love that point you made, Therese, about the display. And you're saying, like, if you think about it, it's not only that you give up a certain margin to get into wholesale, you're also gaining. It's not only that they sell volume, you're also gaining eyeballs. You're getting people to go into a store, whether it's offline or online, someone else's store, they're doing the marketing for you and they're getting exposed to your brand within the context of this store. So yeah, think about the benefits of that as well. I'm saying to the attendees, right?
Yeah, you get to take advantage of their customer base, which hopefully they already normally buy from them and trust them.
Exactly.
So it could be really, really good for that too.
Brilliant.
And then we come to pricing, and pricing can get quite tricky. And there's, you know, we can do hours and hours of workshops on pricing, but it's so individual to everyone. So I'm just going to cover a little bit about what retailers expect. This is based on here in the UK, and I would say Europe too, because the VAT works fairly similarly within Europe. And that is the most common. Like, you will hear people say markup between 2 and 2.2 and 2.7, even 3.9 sometimes. Or you will hear various percentages and discounts thrown around. But the most common is a markup of 2.4. That might be called a wholesale factor. It might be called a markup, or a discount of 50% of the ex-VAT recommended retail price. That is a mouthful, but those two things are the same. But retailers tend to stick to one or the other. They will understand both, but if you were talking to them, they might be like, oh, but our markup is always 2.4, and it's important that you know what that means. So we're going to break that down a little bit. And the reason why your discount is off the ex-VAT price is because here in the UK and obviously also Europe, we have a value added tax, which means that if your product retails at £25, then the retailer will have to pay VAT to HMRC, regardless if you're registered or not. And they need to make their margin on the chunk that they get to keep. So it's really, really important that you get your head around this and understand. And this is like the most common problem that, challenge, I would say, that I see with small businesses. And I hear, it probably doesn't go a week without me hearing, but why do I have to consider VAT? I shouldn't be penalized for that. I'm not registered. It's not about that. It's about the fact that they should be able to buy from you. If you want to wholesale, this is what you have to do. And it's not because they're greedy, but they have a lot of, on the little profit that they make on each product that is taking up space in their shop, they need to make all their profit minus business rate, minus VAT, minus staffing costs, minus shop fittings. There is a lot of things going into running a retail store. So you just have to make sure that you can deal with it. And if you can't, on your current recommended retail prices, I think that you need to review your retail prices. I would say 90% of the time, all the businesses I work with undervalue themselves. And there's lots of reasons for that. But unless your product is super, super handmade and it takes forever and you get no discounts for buying your materials in bulk, there is just, you should be able to offer wholesale really, because you just have to make sure that you're marketing to the right customer, you're targeting the right customer. You need to be paid for what you do. You just put a lot of time and effort into it. So if you can't make it work, then pricing review. So what does it mean then? So the recommended retail price, which is RRP, if you divide it by 1.2, you get the ex-VAT price. So say a candle that retails at £25, the ex-VAT price would be £20.83. And therefore, the wholesale price, if you use the 2.4 markup, would be £10.42. And that's the same if you did a 50% discount, as you can see on the screen now. And alternatively, one other that is very, very common is a markup of 22.5. That is equal of 60% of the RRP, not considering VAT, which gets very confusing. But those are the two that are the most common. So if someone says, oh, I work on 60% discount, they often talk about a markup of 2.5. If they say, oh, I take a 50% discount, they usually mean 50% off the ex-VAT price. And unfortunately, they are not, calculated the same way. So it can get confusing. But yeah, I think maybe you can screenshot this, or there's some as a post on my Instagram that explains a little bit more about the VAT and breaks it down step by step for you.
Brilliant. This is so interesting. I'm blown away. I love the point that you made about basically undervaluing yourself, right? It's interesting. Maybe if we have time later, we can dive deeper into the reasons. Why is it happening? I guess it's because you're new, you're cautious, you're modest, you don't know the game yet, you're trying to dip your toes in the water, and it's fine, right? At the same time, it's a journey. You can leave money on the table at the beginning, but you have to remember that at the end, you can't undervalue yourself. So I love that.
You will get bored of your business and lose the passion for it.
Exactly. Well, so on that, I'm like echoing thoughts of people that I hear. I have a lot of conversations with brands. What I hear all the time is that 50% can be a bit daunting, right? And maybe I'm doing ceramics or stationery or fashion. Is it always the case that I have to pay 50%? Or do you see a variation between different categories? How do you think about that?
You see a small variation. Generally with fashion, it's higher. And ceramics, you might be able to go slightly lower if you are hand throwing it and hand making it. But that is always going to mean that you are restricted with the type of retailers that you are selling to.
Can I challenge you on that a bit?
Yeah.
Okay, so the world is obviously changing, right?
Yeah.
Fast. And what we see is a new trend. And the retailers are now moving to a more online model. So if you think about it, the main justification for them to charge a large margin from you as a brand is because they have a store and they have employees and they have to hustle and they have to go to a trade show and meet you there and pay money and travel and yada, yada, yada. Now they're online, a lot of them, and they're closing down their shops. Maybe they're doing a pop-up store at Christmas. And so they have less expenses. They also are in the business of curating, creating content, building a community. But that means that you also have more leverage and you can get away with maybe smaller margins.
If they really, they have to really love you. Like they really want. I mean, businesses will take on almost like loss leaders if it's a product that they believe passionately about. There's obviously categories that has a lower margin. Magazines has a really magazines has a really low margin. But to be honest, if you have two small ceramicists, for example, you have two of them that produce fairly similar products. They do both produce in the UK. If a shop is, going to select between the two of them, of course you would want them to go for whichever they think their customer is going to love the most, that is going to bring them the most money. But they will also go with whatever is going to bring them the most money if they think they can sell them equally well. And this is the case a lot of times with candles or ceramicists. There's so many of them right now. If you're going to be competitive, I think that you will limit yourself slightly. There's obviously exceptions to this. This is very broad. If you are a small ceramicist and you only want 10 stockists because you want to keep your production small, you want to keep making everything yourself, then you maybe only need 10 stockists, and therefore you can offer less margin because you want to have a different type of relationship with your stockists. But if you want to be able to scale something, I don't think that you can go much lower than that.
Thank you. Great answer. I see a question about, do you want to take questions at the end or right now? How do you prefer to do it?
If it's relating to what we just talked about, I guess we can do them now. And then if it's any more
it's about drop shipping and handmade products. So if your products are very handmade, can drop shipping work? I'm just concerned about the volumes that may be required. From Caitlin.
You would still test your stock levels. So yes, it can work. You just have to be very good at communicating with the websites that do stock you, and make sure you set your stock levels to something that you can manage, and you will have to find a way where you can update them regularly.
Yeah. And I guess if I'm looking into the question, if they're handmade, that means that you're making them, right?
Oh,
So,
Kathleen makes beautiful jewelry
yeah.
that is very handmade. And I
So,
think that,
so I mean, the question about dropshipping is basically from the manufacturer to the consumer. So,
yeah.
right? So if it's handmade, you're, in fact, when you're selling it to consumer, you're drop shipping. So I'm not sure what the question exactly means.
No, so drop shipping, so that will be in like a online retailer selling her products, and then she will fulfill that order. So you
Oh,
will never actually touch their warehouse. I mean, like when we talk about drop shipping, a lot of people only think about eBay and Amazon drop shipping, but it happens on a smaller scale too. It's very common for personalized products, for example. So it happens a lot, I think. But yes, it can work, but communication is very key.
brilliant.
And I think actually for Caitlin's products, so Caitlin makes beautiful like handmade jewelry, that could work quite well because you wouldn't have to give up as much margin. Then I hope that answered it. So what might you want to wholesale is something I get asked a lot, because now when you're seeing the price and the margin, and we talked about like, you know, being competitive and that sort of thing, you might wonder why is that even worth it, you know? And of course it's volume, so your volumes will go up, you will increase, like you might be able to negotiate better prices with your suppliers, which would mean that you can claw back some of that margin. And I think it's really important that you actually, when you do your pricing, review that, so you know you can set goals. You can be, you know, if I sell what I'm selling now, this is what it's costing me, but if I double it, this is what it will actually cost me, and I will claw back some of that margin. You will get repeat orders. So you might have repeat orders right now, but it's not going to be very frequent, I'm guessing. Some of you might be more frequent depending on your product category, but a stockist is likely to order at least a few times a year from you, without that much hand holding, not very much hustling, more or less used to, you know, messaging them, checking in on them every now and then, building a relationship with them. It's not going to be you constantly selling to them. It's more of a two-way relationship. So you will get repeat orders, sometimes for doing nothing at all, and sometimes for prompting them by saying, you know, I have a new product. So you get repeat orders. You will, of course, like we said earlier, get more eyes on your brand. So it's basically paid for marketing in a way. Now, I think it's really important, even though you think of it as paid for marketing, that you still make your money, like I said. So you should still make money on it. And it's a little bit more all year round. There's shops that are busy different times of the year. So you will see shops now around the seasides. I mean, it is a bit different this year because of COVID, but I mean, I'm guessing the seaside shops are doing pretty well right now. And normally they would be thriving right now. Whereas, and so would garden centers, and then they might have a slump, and then they do Christmas grottos and their trading goes up again. And then you will have, of course, retailers that does all their business in the fourth quarter, more or less. But you will also have places that are supported by the locals all year round. People need to gift things all year round. So it's a bit more steady. You can forecast it better. You can plan for it more easily, I think. And then we come to your terms and conditions, which I think are very important to have. I think it makes you look professional. It It makes it easy for everyone because there's clearly defined rules to follow. But of course, they are also made to, you know, we can bend them, we can do goodwills, we can tell, you know, shops that, oh, it's okay, I'll do you, I'm happy to do this for you for the first order or whatever it might be. But having your terms clearly defined is important. So first of all, it is your minimum order. And whenever I start working with a new brand, I would say 90% of times they don't have a minimum order because they think it's restrictive, it's sales preventative, and I think it's the opposite of that. I think that a minimum order makes it clear for everyone what you expect a retailer to find. It means that you attract the right type of retailers for your brand. And it also means that, you know, your minimum order should represent a small range of your products in a store. Things don't sell if they only buy one. Things sell as part of like a range, you know. So your minimum order should reflect that. If you have cards, for example, it will do much better if they take 12 different cards of yours rather than, you know, 2. It would get lost. If you do jewelry, it would do much better if they did like some earrings, some bracelets, some necklaces, and it becomes a story. Then if they just take one ring from you, it's just going to get lost. It's not going to sell as well. And that's also why you have pack sizes. So if something is displayed and it's just a one, of course, if you make big furniture, that's different. But say going back to cards, for example, if there's one card left on the shelf, that often sits on the shelf instead of keep selling. Whereas if there's 6 in a bunch, it will sell much more. People don't like the last one all the time. It's almost like, oh, no one wanted that one. So I always recommend minimum orders and pack sizes. And of course, now when we're in this weird situation, you can offer your retailers extra flexibility, but you have that those terms to fall back to. And then you have carriage paid. So that's the amount that retailer would have to spend with you to get free carriage. Now I know SAPIA give you contribution for it, but I think they still have to hit such a number maybe. I don't know how that works really, but I always advise to have a carriage paid value, and it's often double of the minimum order. The reason for that is, of course, that's an easy upsell. Retailers don't like paying carriage. So it means that if you, instead of getting a £150 order, you're going to get a retailer to spend £250 or £300 without actually being very salesy. That's a great thing. If a retailer is £50 off carriage paid, if you phone them up and say, if you took this bestseller as well, you'd be over carriage paid, carriage, and it will be free. 90% of times they will be like, oh, okay, thank you for that. And they will actually say thank you for you selling them more stuff and saving them £10. So I think carriage paid is important as a sales tool. And then you have Forma. So normally with new smaller brands, I recommend that you invoice on Forma, which means that you take payment up front. But of course, SAPIA would kind of solve part of that challenge for you. So that might not be so applicable, but normally I would ask for Forma. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I encourage you, if you have any questions, you can feel free to type them in, and we're monitoring them.
Cool. So your email pitch. Now, of course, the SAPIA is building this community of retailers, and you might not do the same kind of pitching, but I think it's important to go through it because, you know, I think that it will be in your benefit to also do outreach. And this And of course, you're going to have to communicate with your retailers, and that is really, really important. And I think whenever you communicate with a retailer, whether it is through the platform or on email or on Instagram, I think it's really important to be super clear and keeping it relevant and making sure that you include all the information they need in one place, because retailers' inboxes are awful. Like, they get so much stuff sent to them. You know, if you just imagine all the couple of hundred brands that they already deal with, and then you get like 60 plus brands every week introducing themselves for them, plus all those 200 brands that they already deal with want to sell them their new products and want to prompt them, and then they want to also send them their invoices and stuff. Their inboxes are mental. So make sure you include everything in that one email. That doesn't mean that you're only going to send that one email, but if they ask you everything, make sure you go through it and read through it several times so that you know you answered all their questions. And if you were to send them like a cold email pitch, I think it's really important to be personal. So often we can find out the name of the buyer on their Instagram or on their website or something like that. I think you need to say hello, Therese, not dear sir, hello, or dear sir, madam, or whatever it might be. Make it personal. Tell them why their store is of interest. You know, tell them why you're getting in touch with them. Tell them why you would love to be stocked in their store. Yes, have a template for it, but also make each pitch personal and relevant to the buyer you're contacting. So have you been following them on Instagram for a while and you've seen that they stock another brand that you would just sit so well next to, or that one of your other stockists stock? Are you like, did you used to visit their shop as you were growing up and you just love everything they do? Or have you, whatever it is that makes you want to be stocked in that store, tell them. It also shows that you've done your research and that you not just copied and pasted. Be very clear, be visual. So what I mean with that is that you should embed product images just like you would in your PR pitches. No one's going to open any links, click on any websites unless they know what they're looking for. So make it visual, make it clear also what you sell, and include the recommended retail price on your product. So whether that is your retail range, so my products retail between 50 and 100 pounds, or if you are saying these are my top 3 sellers and this candle retails at 25 pounds, this diffuser retails at 30 pounds, and this my tea lights retail at, you know, 10 pounds. It gives them an idea of what your pricing is like and if it fits into their pricing architecture, and that is super important. If you have a handmade product, it's important that you point out like what your lead time is, for example, because your lead time might be a month, and that's absolutely fine if they're going to plan to that, but they need to know. And keep it relevant. So if they're a small gift store here in the UK, relevant might be you're a small brand, you make everything by yourself, it's handmade, it's sourced in the UK, you're based in the UK, whatever it might be, something that their customer will be interested in. Then I would link, well, you would probably link to SAPIA, but you'd link to your sales material, which could be on SAPIA. And then it's really, really important that you ask questions. So as with social media, we cannot expect anyone to engage with us unless we actually tell them what to do. So we need to ask questions. So I always say ask 2 to 3 questions in each email, other than hello, how are you? Keep them open-ended questions like, are you buying for this autumn, or are you selecting any new brands soon? Would you be interested in what open-ended? You can have a few closed questions like, are you interested in seeing samples, if you're happy to do that, for example. would be a closed-ended question because you can get a yes or no answer, but it is, you know, still leading them closer to a sale. But generally, ask open-ended questions. Make your subject line very relevant. So new ceramic products, new jewelry, new for autumn winter 20 stationery. New is quite good thing to put in your subject line, but I wouldn't make it super clever. Imagine if you had an inbox full of things that you saved because you're looking, you might be interested later, that you want to be them to be able to search stationery, jewelry, and get all, you know, those relevant pictures up. Don't use all capitals. That generally looks more like a newsletter and is a bit shouty, and no one likes to be shouted at. So that's a little bit about your email.
Brilliant. So we have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
I think they're related and we can take them. A few for SAPIA and a few for Therese. I will just like to add to the email from what we're, basically we studied the science of marketing. And what happens is, like, when you're a brand or a product, you tell a story. That story goes into the mind of the other person. Literally, that's what happens. And certain receptors in the mind of the listener, whether they're listening to you or seeing an email from you or opening a communication from you, or even seeing your profile, they tap into that. So I would encourage, I love it because I think what Therese talked about is about building a relationship, keeping it relevant for them, make it about them. Why would it fit their store? At the same time, think about two principles: storytelling and curiosity. How do you tell a story about your brand, about your products, and at the same time entice them, invite them, lure them in to click on the link and take a look, a deeper dive into your brand? Why does it matter? Why is it going to sell well? What emotions will this brand evoke in people? Why would it fit their store as an experience they're trying to create for their consumers? So think about that. I think that, you know, if I'm going back to SAPIA for a second, I'll answer the question about pro forma. One of the problems we try to tackle is exactly that. When a retailer doesn't know you and their inbox is flooded, why would they even consider talking to you? If we put you in the front and center, you can tell your story very effectively in a visually compelling way. You can build trust with them. You can show them that you have a following on social media, and you can tell them your story. That curiosity, that trust, that story is what's going to drive the conversation. And then you have to do everything that Therese mentioned. Be personal, be clear, be specific, be visual, keep it relevant, include any links to any other information they need, and start a conversation. And asking questions is a great way to do that. So I love that. I wanted to add on that a layer from sort of our research, and it's really deep research that we've done in the last 2 years. We had a question about pro forma, about SAPIA, and then one more question for you about postage costs. So let's get to that. I'll just talk about pro forma. So again, a problem that we've identified is that when you're a brand, you don't know a new retailer. Why would you give them payment terms? To combat that and to help you, what we did at SAPIA is that we basically agreed to pay you as a brand upfront. So you don't have to worry and chase anyone to pay you. The retailer side, some of them are going to pay us upfront. Some of them we're going to give them credit, net 30, net 60, net 90, anything that they need to have that flexibility so they can buy from you on a repeat and ongoing basis. So we don't want you to worry about payment terms, and that's why we solve it for you by paying you upfront and giving credit to the other side. So I hope that's clear. Let me know if it's not. And a question for Therese: do you have any advice for working out postage costs if you're, let's see the question, if you haven't done wholesale before? How do I ensure I'm not over or under charging for postage?
I think that you need to see it with your wholesale a little bit more like a contribution towards your postage cost, because sometimes you will overcharge, sometimes you will undercharge. That is always going to happen. For example, if you set your carriage on at £10, it's most likely going to mostly be under that. But if you end up having a slightly bigger order and it's going to be 2 cartons, it might cost you £12 to send out. It's then essentially they paid you £10 and you're contributing £2. I think that you only need to offer that within like mainland UK. It's, you know, unless your products are very small and you're shipping it Royal Mail, then it doesn't matter if it's, you know, one of the Scottish Islands, for example, because it will cost you the same. But if you are ending up, you know, if it's slightly bulky and you're going to be ending up using a courier, and then, you know, if mainland UK would be in your benefit, and otherwise it gets very complicated. So you're just going to have to pack a minimum order up, see how much it weighs, measure the carton, see what that would cost you, and then do the same for a carriage paid order. And you're going to have to see if that works with your margins. If you are based in Europe, you can say that carriage will be on, you know, based on quote. But if your main customer is in the UK, you could still do free mainland UK delivery as long as you calculate what that would cost you. Or you might do minimum order £300 with £25 delivery, because you are based in France, for example. I know some of you are. But then you could still do carriage paid if you want to make it super attractive for UK retailers. Just make sure that you make them aware that you are actually based in France, and therefore your carriage is a bit higher if they don't meet that carriage paid. Again, most of them will then want to meet the carriage paid.
I can jump in. I don't like talking about benefits, but for shipping in the UK, we offer up to 20 kilos per shipment. So we'll cover that for you. And the goal was to enable you to communicate that to the retailer as a benefit. So it's also sustainable shipping. We will offset your carbon, and we're going to invest, basically donate to planting trees to offset that carbon. So you can advertise that you have free sustainable shipping. SAPIA will reimburse you up to £7 per order. Thank you, Therese. We have another question from Hattie. How many products would you say would be in an average minimum order?
Depends on your products, because you would also have your pack sizes. So if you were doing cards, for example, let's make it super easy. You do cards, your minimum order is £80 or £100. Let's make it £100. And your card, say the wholesale price is £1, because my head math is not very, you know, good. Then of course your minimum, you know, that would be 100 products. It doesn't have to be loads. It just have to look like a range. So it really depends on how big your products are. I would say for greeting cards, the pack size is normally 6. For stationery, the pack size is normally 6 or 12 if it's really cheap things, or if it's really small things, maybe 24. For candles, it might be 6. For jewelry, it depends on the pricing. So if you're going more high end, it might actually be 1, and you might be targeting more like gallery shops, or, you know, likelihood they will buy 2 of each. But if you have like slightly, you know, lower prices, it might be 3s, for example. And then you would think, okay, so they need 5 products to make a little display, or, you know, 5 times 3 of each or whatever, then that would be 15. So it really depends on your products. Sorry, it's not a very straight answer.
I think it's a great answer, Therese. I think that, you know, you can think of it in 2 ways, right? One is how will it look in display, and the other one, what's your costs? Do you have a discount, right? If you go above 20, do you have a volume discount as the brand? So definitely helpful. So we are having so much fun, and almost a full hour has passed.
Oh,
we have
wow.
a few more minutes. Maybe if we can concise the last part into like 2 or 3 minutes, what are the key messages that you want people to take away from this webinar today? Would you say that?
I would say everyone can sell. Like, that's my always thing. It's a mindset thing. And it is a lot of confidence building. Buyers want to hear from you. Buyers need to hear from you. They don't have a business if they don't have the suppliers. So you just have to keep trying. And consistency is very key. Consistency is everything when you're going to build wholesale. You know, just like consistency is key for building your Instagram audience, consistency is very key when it comes to wholesale. People, chances are you will not get many replies on that first email. It will take time, but you know, you just have to keep on trying. Persistency is super key, and having a plan on how you're going to do it. And then stay super positive, like positive language. Don't make apologizes for getting in touch. You're helping them by getting in touch with them and reaching out to them and presenting your products to them. They should feel happy about that.
Exactly. To add to that, at least from my perspective, let's admit it, times now are challenging. We definitely live through a pandemic. It's not only a pandemic, it's causing fear, it's changing the economy, we're moving online. It could be very daunting. Whatever you do, doesn't matter if it's wholesale or even just B2C. Think of yourself, right, as a brand. What do you need to do not only to survive, but to thrive? How can you come out the other end of this pandemic or this crisis stronger? And from what we've seen and analyzed, the brands that have done it successfully, they all had something unique about them, and that unique something is storytelling. So they found their niche, they found their angle. A good example is Allbirds, the shoes. You can look at them, how they grew into $100 million brand with a sustainable foam in the sole of the shoe and a great story, and they learn how to do marketing online. So I love the points about mindset. It's really, really important. You need to get into that zone that says you're anti-fragile, you're going to use whatever is happening now to grow, understand the changes that are happening, realize that in order to adjust, thrive in 2020 and the years to come, what you need to do is work on your online marketing, work on your storytelling, learn how to convey trust online, because if someone were to meet you now for the first time online, how will they know you're to be trusted? And in the B2B context, it's even more crucial because they're not just a consumer clicking on an ad, they are going to stalk you in their store and they may have an ongoing relationship with you. How do you establish that trust? Obviously, we're here to help you do that, but think through those challenges and you will come out stronger on the other end of it. At the same time, learn how to create curiosity, intrigue, how to lure people in. Get them engaged with your story, with your personality. Put yourself out there. Learn how to utilize video in your marketing. So these are all tips, right? But it can only happen if you keep, like Therese said, positive language, positive mindset. Try again and again. Be consistent. So I hope this helps. Therese, do you have anything to say, closing remarks before we wrap up the webinar?
Well, no, well, if you want to get in touch with me, this is my details. And what we did was, which I actually don't really usually do, but so if you want help working with me, then you will save £50 if you go for the 3 and 6 months mentoring. And if you have any questions about that, either DM me on Instagram or drop me an email and we can chat about it.
100%. By the way, guys, we didn't talk about it. Therese has classes online. I watched the class on pricing. I recommend it. I think it's 50 if you have any questions, I think you should take it. Regardless of that, we really enjoy working with you, Therese. It's good, and we're highly supportive of that. What I'd like everyone to take away from this webinar is that wholesale is a journey. And although the beginning could be a bit frightening and you have to figure out everything, it's not so scary. Take the first step, then take the second step, and we'll help you do that, right? We can give you data on how to start, recommended lead time, minimum quantities, everything. Pretty much what we're saying, start and then take it from there.
Yeah, definitely.
Great.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been great. I didn't realize it's already been an hour.
Yeah, it's been fun, right?
Because I talk so much.
Well, it was very insightful. I'm glad that everyone enjoyed it. Thank you for attending. And if there's anything you want to follow up with, a question, an email, a concern, something we didn't cover today, feel free. We're always here, both Therese and SAPIA. We're here to help you. So that's it, I guess. Right?
Thank you very much. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.